Once you develop real commitment, once you become truly unstoppable, you'll discover that most people are living far below their potential by choice. They have the same opportunities you have, the same access to information, the same ability to make better decisions, but they choose comfort over growth, security over possibility, excuses over action. This will disturb you at first because you'll realize how much of your life you wasted making the same choices. But then it will liberate you because you'll understand that your competition is not as strong as you thought. Most people quit at the first sign of difficulty, which means your commitment doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be persistent. When failure realizes that you're willing to outlast everyone else, it stops fighting you and starts working for you. Let me tell you something that changed my entire perspective on success and failure. I spent years watching people, studying them, trying to figure out what makes the difference between those who make it and those who don't. And after all that observation, all that thinking, I found the answer. It's not talent, it's not luck, it's not who you know or where you come from. The great separator in life is commitment. You see, most people think commitment is some big dramatic moment where you pound your fist on the table and make a declaration. But that's not commitment. That's just emotion. Real commitment is quiet. It's steady. It's the person who shows up every single day, especially when they don't feel like it. It's the person who keeps going when everyone else has given up and gone home. I remember watching a man in my neighborhood when I was young. Every morning at 5:30, rain or shine, hot or cold, this man would come out of his house and start working on building something in his backyard. Day after day, month after month, people thought he was crazy. They'd shake their heads and say, "What's that old fool doing out there every morning?" But you know what? After 2 years of consistent daily effort, he had built the most beautiful workshop you ever saw. And then he started a business in that workshop that made him more money in 1 year than most people make in 5. That's the power of commitment. It doesn't make noise. It doesn't brag. It just shows up and does the work. Now let me ask you something. Are you interested in your dreams or are you committed to them? There's a huge difference. When you're interested in something, you do it when it's convenient. When you're committed to something, you accept no excuses, only results. Interested people have a lot of stories about why things didn't work out. They'll tell you about the bad weather, the bad timing, the bad economy, the bad people they had to work with. Committed people don't have stories, they have results. Here's what I've learned about commitment after all these years of success and failure, of building businesses and watching them crumble, of helping thousands of people change their lives. Commitment is not about perfection, it's about persistence. It's not about never falling down, it's about always getting back up. The person who is truly committed has made a fundamental decision. They've decided that failure is not an option. Not because they think they'll never face difficulties or setbacks, they know they will, but they've decided that no matter what happens, they will find a way to succeed. And when you make that kind of decision, something magical happens. The universe starts to rearrange itself around your commitment. I've seen it happen over and over again. A person makes a real commitment, not just a wish or a hope, but a true commitment, and suddenly opportunities start showing up that weren't there before. People start offering help that wasn't available yesterday. Resources start appearing that seemed impossible to find just last week. Why does this happen? Because committed people do something that uncommitted people don't do. They pay the price in advance. They start working on themselves and their skills before they need them. They start building relationships before they need them. They start preparing for opportunities before those opportunities appear. Most people wait until they need something before they start working for it. But committed people understand that success is not an event, it's a process. And that process starts long before anyone else can see the results. Let me share something personal with you. When I first started speaking and teaching these ideas about personal development, I was scared to death. I had no experience, no credentials, no reason to think anyone would listen to me, but I had made a commitment. Not to myself, not to my family, but to the people I knew I could help if I developed the skills and found the courage. That commitment carried me through nights when I couldn't sleep because I was so nervous about the next day's presentation. It carried me through audiences that didn't respond the way I hoped they would. It carried me through critics who said I didn't know what I was talking about. And eventually it carried me to stages all around the world, speaking to hundreds of thousands of people who were ready to change their lives. But here's the thing about commitment that most people don't understand. It's not a one-time decision. It's a daily decision. Every morning when you wake up, you have to decide again, am I committed to this dream, this goal, this vision of who I want to become? Or am I just interested? Because life is going to test your commitment every single day. It's going to put obstacles in your path. It's going to surround you with people who don't believe in your dreams. It's going to give you perfectly reasonable excuses to quit. And on those days, your level of commitment is going to determine whether you keep going or whether you give up and join the crowd of people who tried once and quit. The committed person has learned something that the uncommitted person hasn't learned yet. They've learned that the obstacle is the way. Every challenge that shows up in your path is not there to stop you. It's there to develop you. It's there to make you stronger, wiser, more capable than you were yesterday. When a committed person faces a setback, they don't ask, why is this happening to me? They ask, what is this trying to teach me? They don't see problems. They see puzzles to solve. They don't see failures. They see feedback. They don't see endings. They see new beginnings. This is why failure becomes afraid of committed people. Because failure knows that it can't stop them. It can slow them down. It can teach them lessons. It can redirect them toward better strategies and better opportunities, but it cannot stop them. And when failure realizes it cannot stop you, it starts working for you instead of against you. I want you to think about the most committed person you know. Maybe it's someone in your family. Maybe it's someone you work with. Maybe it's someone you've read about or heard about. What do you notice about this person? Do they complain a lot about their circumstances? Do they make excuses for why things aren't working out? Do they blame other people for their problems? Of course not. Committed people don't have time for complaints and excuses and blame. They're too busy working on solutions. They're too busy taking the next step, making the next call, learning the next skill they need to reach their goals. And here's something else you'll notice about truly committed people. They don't need constant motivation from other people. They don't need someone to push them or encourage them or remind them of their goals every day. Their commitment has become internal. It's become part of who they are, not just something they do. This is the difference between discipline and commitment. Discipline is doing what you need to do even when you don't want to do it. But commitment goes deeper than that. Commitment is wanting to do what you need to do because you understand that it's the only path to becoming who you really want to be. When you reach this level of commitment, something incredible happens. You stop fighting against your goals and dreams. You stop seeing the work as a burden and start seeing it as a privilege. You stop counting the cost and start counting the rewards. Not just the external rewards, but the internal rewards. The satisfaction of knowing you're becoming the person you always knew you could be. This is what I mean when I say commitment is the great separator. It separates those who achieve their dreams from those who just dream about them. It separates those who live extraordinary lives from those who settle for ordinary ones. It separates those who make failure afraid of them from those who spend their whole lives afraid of failure. Now let me tell you what commitment actually feels like from the inside, because most people have never experienced it. They think they have, but they haven't. True commitment is not excitement. Excitement fades. It's not passion. Passion comes and goes. True commitment is calm, it's steady, it's unshakable. When you are truly committed, you don't wake up every morning wondering if you feel like working on your goals today. The question never comes up. You just do it. It's like brushing your teeth or taking a shower. You don't have long debates with yourself about whether you're going to do it. You just do it because that's who you are now. That hit me like a lightning bolt. I realized I had been living my life waiting to feel motivated instead of learning to be committed. I was letting my feelings run my life instead of letting my commitment run my feelings. Here's what happens when you make that shift from motivation to commitment. Your relationship with obstacles completely changes. Instead of seeing obstacles as reasons to quit, you start seeing them as opportunities to prove how committed you really are. Instead of asking, how can I avoid this problem, you start asking, how can I solve this problem? The uncommitted person sees a closed door and turns around. The committed person sees a closed door and starts looking for a key. If they can't find a key, they look for a window. If they can't find a window, they start knocking. If knocking doesn't work, they come back tomorrow with better tools. They understand that every door will eventually open for the person who refuses to accept no for an answer. But here's what most people don't understand about commitment. It's not about being stubborn or refusing to change course when you need to. Real commitment is intelligent, it's flexible, it adapts. What doesn't change is the destination. What can change is the route you take to get there. I think about Thomas Edison working on the light bulb. People say he failed 1,000 times before he succeeded. But Edison never saw it that way. He said, I didn't fail 1,000 times. I found 1,000 ways that don't work. That's the mind of a committed person. Every setback is information. Every failure is education. Every obstacle is an opportunity to get better. Or think about Colonel Sanders. He was 65 years old when he started trying to sell his chicken recipe. Do you know how many restaurants rejected him before one finally said yes? Over 1,000. Can you imagine getting rejected over 1,000 times? Most people would quit after 10 rejections. Some would quit after 1. But Colonel Sanders was committed to his vision. He wasn't committed to being comfortable. He wasn't committed to avoiding rejection. He was committed to sharing something he believed in with the world. And because his commitment was stronger than his fear of rejection, he eventually built one of the most successful restaurant chains in history. That's what commitment does. It makes you larger than your circumstances. It makes you stronger than your fears. It makes you more powerful than the obstacles that would stop other people. Now let me tell you about the commitment mindset versus the victim mindset, because this is crucial. The victim mindset says, things happen to me. The commitment mindset says, I happen to things. The victim mindset looks for someone to blame. The commitment mindset looks for something to do. When committed people face challenges, they don't waste time feeling sorry for themselves. They don't spend energy complaining about how unfair life is. They get busy figuring out what they can control and what they can influence. And then they pour all their energy into those areas. I remember a woman who came to one of my seminars. She had been laid off from her job after 15 years with the same company. She was angry, bitter, full of resentment. She spent the first part of our conversation telling me all the reasons why her situation was unfair, why her boss was terrible, why the economy was bad, why everything was working against her. Finally, I stopped her and asked, how's all that anger and blame working for you? Is it getting you any closer to the job you want? She got quiet. Then I asked, what would happen if you took all that energy you're putting into being angry and put it into getting prepared for the opportunity that's coming next? That was a turning point for her. She realized she had been choosing the victim mindset when she could have been choosing the commitment mindset. Instead of focusing on what had happened to her, she started focusing on what she could make happen. Instead of looking backward with resentment, she started looking forward with determination. 6 months later, she called me. She had not only found a new job, she had found a better job with more responsibility and higher pay, but more importantly, she had found something she hadn't had in years. She had found her power. Her commitment to moving forward had been stronger than her attachment to staying stuck in the past. This is what commitment does. It moves you from being a victim of your circumstances to being the architect of your future. It moves you from reacting to life to creating life. It moves you from hoping things will get better to making things better. But here's something else about commitment that I want you to understand. Real commitment attracts resources. It attracts opportunities. It attracts people who want to help. Why? Because committed people are rare. And when other people see real commitment, they want to be part of it. Think about it. If someone came to you with a half-hearted idea, someone who wasn't sure if they really wanted to pursue their goal, would you invest your time or money or energy in helping them? Probably not. But if someone came to you with absolute clarity about what they wanted to achieve, an unshakable commitment to making it happen, wouldn't you be more likely to help? Of course you would. The world is full of people with good ideas who lack commitment. What the world is short of is people with good ideas who have the commitment to see those ideas through. When you become that person, when you develop that level of commitment, you become magnetic. Opportunities that were invisible before suddenly become visible. People who never noticed you before suddenly want to work with you. Resources that seemed impossible to access suddenly become available. I've seen this happen so many times. A person makes a real commitment to change their life, and within weeks, sometimes within days, their phone starts ringing with opportunities they never expected. Coincidence? I don't think so. I think the universe responds to commitment the same way people do. It wants to support what's real and lasting, not what's temporary and half-hearted. But commitment also requires something that stops most people before they start. It requires you to burn the bridges behind you. It requires you to eliminate the easy ways out. It requires you to put yourself in a position where you have to succeed because failure is no longer an option you're willing to accept. Most people want to keep their options open. They want to try something new while still keeping their old life as a safety net. But that's not commitment. That's just experimentation. And experimentation rarely produces extraordinary results. When Cortez landed in the New World, you know what he did? He burned his ships. His men couldn't go back even if they wanted to. They had to go forward. They had to succeed. That's commitment. That's what it takes to make failure afraid of you. Now, I'm not saying you should be reckless or foolish. I'm saying you should be clear about what you're committed to and then arrange your life to support that commitment. If you're committed to building a business, stop spending your evenings watching television and start spending them learning the skills you need. If you're committed to improving your health, stop buying junk food and start buying healthy food. If you're committed to strengthening your relationship, stop making excuses for why you don't have time and start making time. Committed people don't wait for perfect conditions. They create favorable conditions through their choices and actions. They don't wait for motivation to strike. They do what needs to be done whether they feel like it or not. They don't wait for guarantees. They provide their own security through their competence and their character. This is what separates committed people from everyone else. Everyone else is waiting for something external to change before they commit. Committed people commit first, and then everything external starts to change. They understand that commitment is not the reward for success. Commitment is the cause of success. Now that you understand what commitment looks like, let me show you how to build the mental foundation that makes that kind of commitment possible. Because here's what I've learned after decades of studying successful people and helping others achieve their dreams. Commitment without the right philosophy behind it is just stubbornness. And stubborn people don't succeed. They just stay stuck longer than everyone else. Real commitment is built on a foundation of clear thinking and strong values. It's built on a philosophy that can weather any storm, handle any setback, and overcome any obstacle. Without this foundation, your commitment will crumble the first time things get really difficult. And things will get difficult. That's not pessimism, that's preparation. Let me start with the most important piece of this foundation, your personal values. Most people have never taken the time to figure out what they really value. They drift through life letting other people's values guide their decisions. They let society tell them what success looks like. They let their family tell them what they should want. They let their friends tell them what's realistic and what's not. But committed people know exactly what they value. They know what matters to them and what doesn't. They know what they're willing to sacrifice for and what they're not. And this clarity becomes their compass when everything else is confusing. I remember when I first started working on my own values, I was about 30 years old, and I thought I knew what I wanted. But when I really sat down and thought about it, I realized I had been chasing other people's definitions of success. I had been trying to prove myself to people whose opinions shouldn't have mattered to me. I had been living someone else's life. That was a hard day, but it was also a liberating day, because once I got clear on my own values, my own definition of success, my own vision of what I wanted my life to look like, everything became simpler. Decisions that used to be difficult became easy. Opportunities that used to confuse me became clear. I finally knew what I was committed to and why. Here's what happens when your commitment is rooted in your deepest values. It becomes unshakable, because you're not just committed to achieving a goal. You're committed to living according to what matters most to you. And that kind of commitment can survive anything. But values alone aren't enough. You also need a philosophy that helps you handle the inevitable challenges that come with pursuing anything worthwhile. And the most important part of that philosophy is this: everything that happens to you is either helping you grow or helping you learn what you need to change. Most people see setbacks as evidence that they should quit. Committed people see setbacks as evidence that they're on the right track. Because easy goals don't require commitment. Anyone can achieve easy goals. It's the difficult goals, the ones that require you to grow and change and become more than you are today, that separate the committed from the uncommitted. I learned this lesson from a farmer I met years ago. He told me something I've never forgotten. He said, "Jim, the strongest trees are not the ones that grew in perfect conditions. They're the ones that had to fight the wind and the storms and the drought. Those trees developed deep roots and strong trunks because they had to. The trees that grew in perfect conditions look beautiful, but they fall over in the first strong wind." That's the philosophy you need if you want your commitment to last. You need to understand that the challenges are not trying to stop you. They're trying to strengthen you. They're not trying to break you. They're trying to build you. Every obstacle that shows up in your path is an opportunity to develop the muscles you're going to need for the bigger challenges ahead. But here's what makes the difference between people who grow from their challenges and people who get broken by them: how they talk to themselves when things get tough. The conversation you have with yourself in those moments determines everything. When uncommitted people face setbacks, they say things like, "I knew this wouldn't work. I should have known better. I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I should try something easier." And then they wonder why they don't have the strength to keep going. When committed people face setbacks, they say things like, "This is interesting. What can I learn from this? How can I use this experience to get better? What would I do differently if I had to do this again?" They treat every failure as a classroom and every mistake as a teacher. Your self-talk in difficult moments is not just important, it's everything. Because that self-talk is creating your reality. If you tell yourself you can't handle something, you won't be able to handle it. If you tell yourself you're not strong enough, you won't be strong enough. If you tell yourself you should quit, you will quit. But if you tell yourself that every challenge is making you stronger, you will get stronger. If you tell yourself that every setback is teaching you something valuable, you will learn something valuable. If you tell yourself that you can find a way through any obstacle, you will find a way through any obstacle. This is why building the right mental foundation is so crucial. Your mind is the control center for your commitment. If your mind is not properly prepared, your commitment will not survive the first real test. Let me tell you about a man I coached several years ago. He came to me because he wanted to start his own business, but he was struggling with doubt and fear. Every time he started to make progress, something would go wrong, and he would start questioning whether he should continue. The problem wasn't his business plan. The problem wasn't his market. The problem was his mental foundation. He had never developed the inner strength to handle the normal ups and downs of building something significant. So we worked on his self-talk, we worked on his values, we worked on his philosophy about challenges and setbacks, and most importantly, we worked on his daily mental disciplines. Because commitment is not just about what you do when you feel committed. That's where daily disciplines come in. Committed people have routines and habits that keep their minds strong even when their emotions are weak. They read books that inspire them. They listen to programs that educate them. They spend time with people who support their goals instead of people who discourage them. They understand that your mind is like a garden. If you don't plant good seeds, weeds will grow. If you don't feed it good thoughts, it will create bad thoughts. If you don't give it positive input, it will generate negative output. Most people leave their mental development to chance. They read whatever happens to be lying around. They listen to whatever happens to be on the radio. They watch whatever happens to be on television. They talk to whoever happens to be nearby. And then they wonder why they don't have the mental strength to stick with their commitments when things get difficult. Committed people don't leave their mental development to chance. They are intentional about what goes into their minds. They choose their books carefully. They choose their music carefully. They choose their conversations carefully. They choose their associations carefully because they understand that what goes into your mind determines what comes out of your life. This is not about positive thinking. Positive thinking without positive action is just wishful thinking. This is about developing the kind of mental toughness that allows you to take positive action even when everything around you is negative. Negative. I want you to think about the last time you faced a real challenge in your life. How did you handle it? Did you stay strong or did you fall apart? Did you keep moving forward or did you retreat? Did you look for solutions or did you look for someone to blame? Your answer to those questions will tell you everything you need to know about the current strength of your mental foundation. If your foundation is strong, you handled the challenge well. If your foundation needs work, you probably didn't handle it as well as you could have. But here's the good news. You can strengthen your mental foundation starting today. You can develop better self-talk starting with your very next thought. You can clarify your values starting with your very next decision. You can improve your philosophy starting with how you interpret whatever happens to you next. The key is consistency. Just like physical strength, mental strength is built through repetition. You don't go to the gym once and expect to be strong for the rest of your life. You go consistently, day after day, building strength gradually over time. Your mind works the same way. You feed it good thoughts consistently, day after day, building mental strength gradually over time. You practice positive self-talk consistently, day after day, building confidence gradually over time. You make decisions based on your values consistently, day after day, building character gradually over time. And here's what happens when you have been building this foundation consistently for months or years. Challenges that would have stopped you before don't even slow you down. Problems that would have overwhelmed you before become puzzles you solve quickly. Setbacks that would have discouraged you before become setups for even greater comeback. This is when failure truly becomes afraid of you. Because failure knows it cannot break someone whose mental foundation is unshakable. It knows it cannot discourage someone whose self-talk is consistently positive. It knows it cannot stop someone whose commitment is rooted in clear values and strong philosophy. When you reach this level of mental strength, you become unstoppable. Not because nothing bad will ever happen to you, but because nothing bad that happens to you will ever stop you from becoming who you are meant to become. Now let me share with you the practical strategies that turn commitment from a good intention into a living reality. Because understanding commitment is one thing. Actually maintaining it day after day, month after month, year after year, that's something entirely different. And that's where most people struggle. The first thing you need to understand is that willpower alone will never sustain long-term commitment. Willpower is like a muscle. It gets tired. It needs rest. It can only handle so much before it gives out. If your commitment depends entirely on willpower, you will fail. Not because you're weak, but because you're using the wrong approach. Successful people don't rely on willpower. They rely on systems. They create structures in their lives that make commitment easier, not harder. They design their environment to support their goals instead of fighting against them every day. Let me give you an example. If you're committed to eating healthy food, but your kitchen is full of junk food, you're making commitment harder than it needs to be. Every time you open the refrigerator, you have to make a choice. And every choice requires willpower. Make enough choices in a day and your willpower gets depleted. But if you design your environment properly, if you fill your kitchen with healthy food and eliminate the junk food, you don't have to make that choice every time. Your environment is supporting your commitment instead of testing it. This principle applies to every area of your life. If you're committed to learning new skills, don't keep your books in a closet upstairs. Keep them where you can see them. If you're committed to exercising, don't hide your workout clothes in the back of a drawer. Put them where they remind you of your commitment every day. I learned this lesson early in my speaking career. I was committed to becoming a better speaker, but I was struggling to find time to practice. Every day I would tell myself I was going to practice, and every day something else would come up. I was relying on willpower instead of systems. Finally, I realized what was happening. I was making it too hard for myself to succeed. So I created a system. I set up a small recording studio in my home office. I kept my practice materials right on my desk where I could see them first thing every morning. I scheduled practice time on my calendar like it was an important meeting. Suddenly practicing became easier. I wasn't fighting against my environment anymore. My environment was working with me. And within 6 months, my speaking had improved more than it had in the previous 2 years. That's the power of systems. They make commitment sustainable by reducing the number of decisions you have to make every day. They create momentum instead of resistance. They turn good intentions into automatic behaviors. But systems are just the beginning. The second strategy that makes commitment sustainable is the careful selection of your associations. And this might be the most important strategy of all, because the people you spend time with have more influence on your commitment than any other factor. Show me someone who consistently surrounds themselves with people who are more successful, more committed, more focused than they are, and I'll show you someone whose life is moving in an upward direction. Show me someone who consistently surrounds themselves with people who complain, make excuses, and settle for mediocrity, and I'll show you someone whose commitment is in danger. This is not about being arrogant or thinking you're better than other people. This is about understanding that influence is real and it works both ways. You can either influence others to rise to your level of commitment, or they can influence you to drop to their level of commitment. But very rarely do both happen at the same time. I remember having to make some difficult decisions about associations when I was building my first business. There were people I had grown up with, people I cared about, who simply could not understand why I was working so hard, or why I thought I could achieve something different than what they had achieved. Every time I spent time with them, they would ask me questions like, when are you going to get a real job? Or, why don't you just be happy with what you have? They weren't trying to hurt me. They were just uncomfortable with my commitment because it made them question their own lack of commitment. I had to make a choice. I could keep spending time with people who didn't support my goals, or I could find new associations that would strengthen my commitment instead of weakening it. It was a hard choice, but it was also an easy choice, because I knew that my associations would ultimately determine my destination. So I started spending more time with people who were building businesses, people who understood what commitment looked like, people who encouraged my growth instead of questioning it. And that change in associations made all the difference in the world. But here's something important to understand about commitment. It's not about avoiding all difficulties and setbacks. They're going to come whether you want them or not. What matters is how quickly you bounce back from them. And there's a specific way that committed people handle setbacks that allows them to bounce back stronger than before. When committed people face a setback, they follow what I call the three-step recovery process. First, they acknowledge what happened without making excuses or blaming others. Second, they extract the lesson from the experience. Third, they adjust their approach and get back into action as quickly as possible. Most people get stuck on the first step. They spend so much time and energy trying to explain why the setback wasn't their fault that they never get to the learning or the adjusting. They turn a temporary setback into a permanent excuse. But committed people understand that setbacks are not permanent unless you make them permanent. Every setback is temporary if you learn from it quickly and get back into action quickly. The key is speed. The faster you recover, the less damage the setback can do to your momentum. I learned this from a businessman who had built and lost 3 fortunes by the time he was 50 years old. Most people would have given up after the first failure, maybe the second, but this man understood something about commitment that most people never learn. He told me, "Jim, failure is not falling down. Failure is staying down. Every time I lost everything, I was disappointed, but I was never defeated because I knew that as long as I was willing to get back up and try again, I hadn't really failed. I had just found another way that doesn't work." That's the mindset of a committed person. They don't see setbacks as evidence that they should quit. They see setbacks as evidence that they're playing a game worth playing. Because easy games don't have setbacks. Only challenging, worthwhile games have real setbacks. This brings me to another crucial strategy, the importance of measuring progress instead of just focusing on results. Most people focus only on the final destination and miss all the progress they're making along the way. And when you miss the progress, you miss the encouragement that keeps commitment alive during difficult times. Committed people celebrate small wins. They acknowledge incremental progress. They recognize that every step forward, no matter how small, is moving them closer to their destination. And this recognition creates a positive feedback loop that strengthens commitment over time. Let me tell you about a woman who came to one of my seminars. She wanted to lose 50 pounds, but she was discouraged because she had only lost 2 pounds in her first month. She was ready to quit because the progress seemed too slow. I asked her, "How much weight did you lose last month before you started your program?" She said, "None, actually I gained weight." I said, "So you went from gaining weight to losing weight. That's not slow progress. That's a complete reversal of direction. That's huge progress." She had been so focused on the final goal that she missed the significance of what she had already accomplished. Once she learned to measure and celebrate her progress, her commitment became much stronger. And eventually, she reached her goal. The final strategy I want to share with you is the power of public commitment. When you make your commitment public, when you tell other people what you're working toward, something powerful happens. You create external accountability that supports your internal commitment. Now you have to be careful about who you share your commitments with. Don't share them with people who will discourage you or try to talk you out of your goals. Share them with people who will support you and hold you accountable in a positive way. But here's why public commitment works so well. It makes the cost of quitting higher than the cost of continuing. When your commitment is private, the only person who knows if you quit is you. But when your commitment is public, when other people are watching and supporting your progress, quitting becomes much more expensive. I've used this strategy throughout my career. Every time I set a major goal, I tell the people who matter most to me what I'm working toward and when I plan to achieve it. This creates a positive pressure that keeps me moving forward even when I don't feel like it. Your commitment doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be persistent. These strategies, systems instead of willpower, careful selection of associations, quick recovery from setbacks, measuring progress, and public accountability, these are the tools that make persistence possible. They turn commitment from something you have to think about every day. So what does it really mean to live a life where failure is afraid of you? It means you've become the kind of person who cannot be stopped by temporary setbacks. It means you've developed such unshakable commitment that obstacles become stepping stones instead of roadblocks. It means you've transformed yourself into someone who sees every challenge as an opportunity to prove how committed you really are. So when you reach this level of commitment, something extraordinary happens. You stop being afraid of failure because you understand that failure is not your enemy. Failure becomes your teacher, your trainer, your guide to better strategies and stronger character. And when you're no longer afraid of failure, failure loses its power over you. I want you to understand something important. Making failure afraid of you doesn't mean you'll never face difficulties. It doesn't mean everything will be easy from now on. What it means is that difficulties will no longer have the power to defeat you. Challenges will no longer have the ability to make you quit. Setbacks will no longer be able to convince you that you're on the wrong path. Now let me tell you what I've observed about people who have reached this level of commitment. First, they stop asking whether they can achieve their goals. They start asking how they will achieve their goals. The question changes from can I to how will I. That simple shift in language represents a massive shift in thinking. Second, they stop looking for permission from other people to pursue their dreams. They stop waiting for someone else to believe in them before they believe in themselves. They stop seeking approval for their goals and start taking responsibility for their results. Third, they develop what I call strategic patience. They understand that significant achievements take time, and they're willing to work for years, if necessary, to reach their destination. But they also have tactical urgency. They know that every day matters. Every action counts. Every choice is either moving them closer to their goal or further away from it. When you combine strategic patience with tactical urgency, you become unstoppable. You have the long-term perspective that keeps you going when progress seems slow, and you have the short-term focus that makes sure you're always moving forward. But perhaps the most important thing about people who make failure afraid of them is this. They stop living their lives trying to avoid pain and start living their lives trying to create value. They realize that the pain of discipline weighs ounces, but the pain of regret weighs tons. Most people spend their entire lives trying to stay comfortable. They make decisions based on what's easy, what's safe, what won't require them to stretch or grow or risk anything, and then they wonder why their lives feel empty and meaningless. Committed people understand that meaning doesn't come from comfort. Meaning comes from contribution. It comes from becoming more than you were yesterday. It comes from pushing past your limitations and discovering what you're truly capable of achieving. I think about the legacy you're creating right now with every choice you make. Because whether you realize it or not, your level of commitment is teaching everyone around you what's possible. Your children are watching, your friends are watching, your coworkers are watching, and they're learning from your example whether dreams are worth pursuing or whether it's better to just settle for whatever life happens to give you. When you live with unshakable commitment, when you become someone who refuses to quit no matter what happens, you give other people permission to do the same. You show them that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things if they're willing to stay committed when everyone else gives up. This is how you change the world, not through grand gestures or dramatic moments, but through the quiet, daily demonstration of what commitment looks like. Every time you get up early to work on your goals when you could sleep in, you're showing someone what commitment looks like. Every time you keep going when things get difficult, instead of making excuses, you're teaching someone what commitment looks like. Your commitment is not just about you. It's about everyone whose life will be touched by what you create, what you build, what you become through your commitment. It's about the example you set and the inspiration you provide and the proof you offer that dreams are not just fantasies for other people. So let me ask you this final question. What are you committed to? Not what do you hope will happen, not what you think would be nice. What are you absolutely, unshakably, completely committed to achieving, regardless of how long it takes or how difficult it becomes? Because until you can answer that question with clarity and conviction, until you can feel that commitment burning inside you like an unquenchable fire, you haven't started living yet. You've just been existing. But once you find that commitment, once you make that decision, once you draw that line in the sand and say, this is what I'm going to do with my life and nothing is going to stop me, everything changes. Your entire world reorganizes itself around your commitment. Opportunities appear. Resources become available. People show up to help. And failure, recognizing that it cannot defeat someone with that level of commitment, quietly steps aside and starts working for you instead of against you. That's what it means to be so committed that failure is afraid of you. That's what it means to live a life of purpose and power and contribution. That's what it means to become the person you were always meant to be. The choice is yours. You can keep living a life of good intentions and wishes and hopes, or you can make the commitment that transforms everything. You can keep being someone who tries things when they're convenient, or you can become someone who achieves things because they're committed. Failure is waiting to see what you decide. It's hoping you'll choose the easy path, the safe path, the comfortable path. But if you choose commitment, if you choose to become unshakable in your pursuit of what matters most to you, failure will have no choice but to get out of your way and let you pass. So what are you committed to? Not what you hope will happen, not what you think would be nice. What are you absolutely, unshakably, completely committed to achieving, regardless of how long it takes or how difficult it becomes? Because until you can answer that question with clarity and conviction, until you can feel that commitment burning inside you like an unquenchable fire, you haven't started living yet. You've just been existing. But once you find that commitment, once you make that decision, once you draw that line in the sand and say, this is what I'm going to do with my life and nothing is going to stop me, everything changes. Your entire world reorganizes itself around your commitment. Opportunities appear, resources become available, people show up to help, and failure, recognizing that it cannot defeat someone with that level of commitment, quietly steps aside and starts working for you instead of against you. The choice is yours. You can keep living a life of good intentions and wishes and hopes, or you can make the commitment that transforms everything. Failure is waiting to see what you decide. It's hoping you'll choose the easy path, the safe path, the comfortable path. But if you choose commitment, failure will have no choice but to get out of your way and let you pass. The time for excuses is over. The time for commitment is now. Make failure afraid of you.